CPC meeting to order. Agenda item number 1 is a review of the February 17th. Is that the right date? February 17th, our last meeting? Yep, February 17th, 21 meeting minutes. Meg forwarded those earlier today. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review those. Any comments, questions?
They're pretty short this time around.
I'm sorry, Meg?
They're pretty short this time around.
Yeah. So do we have any motions?
Mr. Chairman, I forwarded, yes, I approve, make a motion to approve them if everybody had a chance to read them and go through them. I'm under the presumption that we all did. I don't know that, but.
Right. So we have a motion. Do we have a second to approve, and we can discuss them? Second to approve?
A second.
All right. So I have a motion and a second to approve the meetings. Open to the discussion. Has everybody had a chance to review them? We're comfortable with voting, comments, questions?
Well, I unfortunately have not had a chance to review them, but I'm happy to rely on my colleagues who have and who have now moved to accept them and seconded it. So I would also support just approving them.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. All right. So we have agenda item number 2, which is a review of the outstanding 2021 applications. Memory serves, we're talking about Mayor Field, 210,000. 1 Holyoke 2-family house on Dwight Street, 199,000. The MIFA mural restoration of 100,000, and last but not least, again, the Opportunity Council's application for rental assistance of $50,000. So we had at our last meeting Q&A, brief presentations from each of the applicants. So that's where we are. I don't know if anybody wants to make any motions for funding any of the outstanding applications. If so, feel free.
I'm wondering if Amy could just quickly review how much money is left.
Good point. So Meg,
Yeah,
per your meeting minutes, we had $448,342. Everybody in agreement with that number?
I just wanted to make sure nothing had changed in terms of Amy looking at the budget with Andrew or anything else.
yeah, well, Andrew's been too busy, but in our last communication, he did agree with me that it was about 450,000. Plus, I just sent him something about, because I know that like the Glow Tech project was a little bit underspent, but I think about 12,000. So,
Okay.
And I'm not sure if he accounted for that. So I think that going with about that number sounds good.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order, if I may. We had $448,000. Out of that, we've committed $240,000 to the fire engine, Pulaski Park, the War Memorial Building, and the JFK restoration.
Is on top of that. This is after all of that's been taken out.
Yeah.
Well, you mean what's our balance after all that's been taken out?
$448,000.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
It's largely because we left such a pot of money aside at the end of last year because we wanted to be conservative. So that and because receipts have been on pace every single quarter. So we had more tax receipts than we really anticipated. So we ended up with a surplus.
And some money came back in for projects there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Like the Alpine came back in.
Just so I'm aware that currently we have in our wallet this evening, $448,000 we have in our wallet. That the other, the fire engine, Pulaski Park, or Memorial JFK, those are all paid for.
Correct.
Okay, so we have in our wallet this evening $448,000.
Correct.
Beautiful. No, thank you. It's good news.
Although, as you will find out, or I think Kip knows, there might be a change in the amount that's requested from some of the applicants in number 3 because of procurement law, which could change the amount that's really available.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Right. So
Amy, that's a
So-
really good point. Is there any update yet on, maybe it makes sense to explain what's going on in terms of why that's the case? And also, do we have any sense then of what that difference might be? Is it like doubling the
Yeah.
cost of a project, or is it an extra 30% approximately?
So
Well, I know about that for one of them. And actually, I wonder if, Mr. Chair, you might consider flipping that part of the agenda, because if you started with number 3, we'd have a better idea, at least a closer, accurate idea of how much funds are left for number 2 in the agenda.
Okay.
I mean, we could do that, but let me add this. There might be some increased requests from people who have already received our recommendation for funding for the amounts that they asked for. I don't, they're in the neighborhood, with the JFK Memorial, perhaps an increase, of $5,000 to $10,000 more than what they've already been awarded. My feeling about that gap and about the potential for increased requests from the War Memorial is that they should submit revised applications, and if they need the funds. The War Memorial, I don't know whether the budget that they put together included prevailing wages or not, and how much it might affect their budget if they did have to pay prevailing wages. The JFK Memorial, remember they came in asking for $6,000. We questioned whether they might need to pay prevailing wages and ended up bumping it from 6 up to 10. Now, I would be shocked if prevailing wages brought that project from $6,000 to $20,000.
Well, that's what he has just said.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one of the things that we have demanded of every applicant, because for obvious reasons, is that their budgets and the amounts requested and their other sources of funds show clearly that either they can complete the project with what we are giving them, or that they have some realistic possibility of raising the additional money elsewhere, and that we'll get these funds back if they don't. And I think the problem with these things, and I would say by all means have them represent and we can see where it goes. But I would not want to have us in a position where we authorized, say, $10,000 for the JFK Memorial. They spent it. They ran out of money midway through, and then it was okay. Are we now obligated to gross them up for their actual costs? Are we going to assume that the public and their fundraising capacities will somehow make that money up? Or are we going to leave Holyoke with a half-done project sitting there? And I would much rather know for sure with each of these, well, within the measures of human surety, because you're never 100%. But I think it makes more sense to say, hey guys, if this is the situation, come on back and show us what you really need. And if we can budget for it, we obviously liked the project the first time, but I'm not sure that an interim grant of, okay, here are funds before we know the full cost is really a great idea.
And I agree 100% with that. What I think we're dealing with now is we have, we've gone through a process where we now have, 4 applicants in front of us and a budgeted amount of money, remaining funds in our account. And do we want to anticipate that their needs of the programs that have already been through this process might increase, and therefore have that factor into our consideration of these existing projects? personally, I would say you had your bite at the apple, and if you can't do the project for what you budgeted and came to us requesting for, then then resubmit. And perhaps it is more of a contract conditions issue than it is our consideration of the remaining projects.
Well, we could certainly work it that way, but I would suggest that, especially since, as I recall, these haven't gone to the city council yet. So these are not final approvals. And I would suggest that we just invite these folks to come back in and present us with revised budgets.
Resubmit.
Yeah, or.
And so what do we do about the
amend
that are sitting here that are applicants that have submitted and, are waiting for us to take action?
Yeah, well, I think we can still take action on them. We obviously don't have enough money to fund them all. I'm not sure that everyone sitting here is willing to fund them all, even if we had all of the money. And I think we just have to, as we consider this, take into account what kind of a reserve we want in case projects that we care desperately about come back needing more money.
Well, I mean, I think that is.
It sounds like we're saying exactly the same thing.
That's the
same way.
It is a reasonable position to take, to say, okay, I'm going to vote individually with that in mind. That's a legitimate consideration in making a determination. I think my point is, I don't think the committee should pause these other applications as across the board while we wait to find out what previously approved projects revised budgets are.
Yeah, so, no, I agree with that completely.
All right, so let's deal with those kind of specific things when we get to talking about the contract terms for the projects that we have already voted to recommend to the city council. And let's see what we have on agenda item number 2, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 projects.
Yes, just before we move off this point, though, I would suggest that we put any discussion of those contract terms on hold and vote to just pause those applications in the process. We know we approved them at the dollar amounts that were put forward. We don't know whether we would approve them if the contract terms were materially different and we had no assurance that they could complete those projects. And honestly, I think that it's possible that we would be willing to vote to increase to a reasonable budget for some of them if we have the funds and if we know what the budget is. Right. But I'm not sure that I see the point of going through what contract terms would be and referring these to the city council for approval, without really knowing what we're asking.
No, I agree wholly with that. And that's, if I look, there's 7 projects whose contract terms are on our agenda. 3 of the 7, I believe, are potentially affected by this prevailing wage additional expense. So those, I would agree 100% that the 3 of those contracts we should, not deal with. But there's 4 other ones that don't have that same complication. So
no reason not to go ahead with those.
It turns out that 5 of them require procurement law who were unaware of that.
Well, there's 2 different things, right? There's
just
procurement
so
and prevailing wage. So, prevailing wage relates to, public works construction projects.
Actually, 4 of them. The other one I'm thinking of is Scott's Tower, which is has different laws, but this is what Bob Perret told me, that they do have to follow something related.
That's going to be an interesting discussion when we get to that. So can we jump back to the agenda and, and again, if nobody has any projects that they want to make a motion to fund, then we'll very quickly be on to the next agenda item. And
I'm happy to see several items funded. I just think that we should keep in mind not getting too tight, right? Like I can do the calculations a number of ways, and I can see ways to get a lot of different projects funded. but they would draw down every penny. So I feel like it's important just to keep that in mind, that I don't want to get too close.
Well, I
You
think
know, so that's just in my mind as we move forward with wanting to fund other projects. I would like to make a motion to fund $210,000, the full request for the Mayor Field park restoration project that was put forward by Terry Shepard at Parks and Rec.
I second. I second too.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to fund Mayor Field at $210,000. Open for discussion.
Well,
Anybody?
seems like a reasonable thing that's going to improve the quality of life in Holyoke, and that probably won't, most of our citizens will cheer for. So I'm comfortable with that one.
Absolutely. No, Mr. Chairman, I couldn't agree more. It's that neighborhood certainly needs it. It's certainly a boost to the neighborhood and the people whose money we're spending. It's their neighborhood, and it's sorely needed. It's been sorely needed since I played there. That's a long time ago.
So, okay, Rose, you have something you want to add?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I like the Mayor Field. I drove by it, and I wish it was more easily accessible for parking, but I see the need to have that in that neighborhood.
If I may
I'll
say,
ask a question.
if I may say, oh, go ahead.
No, you were first. Sorry.
Well, I spoke to a friend of mine who was a counselor of mine at HCC. He lives right behind Mayor Field. His name is Harold. I asked him to come on, and he's too shy, he said. But he told me that he hopes that we do vote yes on the field, right? Because he takes his kids there to play ball, and he wishes that the field was more. He wishes that the city took a little more care of that field in general, not just the baseball field, but along with the park, with the sled, the swings, and all the other stuff. Yeah. And with regards to parking, I think there may be a way. I passed by it the other day.
Yeah.
There may be a way to put in a couple slots. You know what I mean? To free up some of the parking that's on the side of in the front of the road. But yeah, that's something that we could continue looking into with Terry too as well. But yeah.
So let me just, my 2 cents, right? When Terry was here last meeting and we asked her about, and, as we did all the applicants, kind of a reduced ask, like would a different number, and Terry seemed to indicate that her priority would be, the $160,000 for a playground, which would not be any money right now towards the playing fields. So she took would be very happy to get 160 instead of 210. I'm assuming she would be happier with 210, but there was also an idea of, are the fields being used, and this is this is in your wheelhouse. So I'm not proposing that we just fund 160. I just want to have the conversation to make sure that they're going to, that it's good money well spent.
So I think that if the money gets invested into the field, or I can probably confirm with Holyoke Youth Baseball, they'll start using the field again when it comes to the field actually getting taken care of, to the point where they upgraded it. It's not going to be much like super upgrades, but it's probably like flatten out the turf and actually like take care of the grass, where it's not so many bounces when a kid hits a ground ball and doesn't bust him in his face. It actually makes it safer for them to play. But if they don't use it, I already spoke to some of the board members on the softball for youth girls. It's the same size, and then we can turn it into a girls softball diamond. And they lost the field at Ian White, so that's kind of gaining a field. I know Terry says that we have Crozier, but Crozier Field is another field that needs love too eventually, because it's dangerous to have our kids playing baseball on fields where the ball can literally pop up and bust you in the face if you're not fielding the ground ball right. And I mean, the best fields we have are at McKenzie. So, but.
So I just have a question. So I think that I remember Terry Shepard saying that the reason why that they could lower the price would be that they would put in wood chips around the playground instead of the whatever they suggested in the beginning, which I can't remember what it's called.
Rubber, I think you're talking about.
Yeah, like rubberizing. So for me,
I don't think, sorry to interrupt. I don't think, I don't think that's the
not
cost reduction.
It was another way of reducing it. She offered a few different pathways.
Below the 160. The 160 gets her the rubber safe surface under the playscapes and things. And I think that the other $50,000 would be an investment in the improving the playing fields.
Right.
So
that seems to me to be genuinely valuable in a placemaking kind of way. We want lots of people using these parks.
Right.
Small interventions can have a huge impact on how heavily something is used and what an amenity is for the neighborhood. It just seems like a real force multiplier here.
The only other thing I'll add too as well is that in my perspective, right, the fields in that area don't fall under CDBG. So more than likely, they will never get any funding. And the only way they will get funding is through CPA. Okay. That's the only way that these fields would get any funding, because they don't fall under CDBG money, and the city doesn't really have extra cash to just be investing in the fields at the moment. So like if the way I see it on the Parks and Recs is the only opportunity for us to be able to hook up the fields that are in the areas that kind of pay a lot of taxes, that pay their fair share of taxes, right, is by hooking up these fields with CPA dollars. That's how I see it.
Yes. Beautiful.
Mary, you had a question that you wanted to... No, you're all set? Okay, Amy, you have something that you want to add?
I just wanted to mention that, like the other ones we're going to get to later, this is a city project. And I think what Bob Parent told me is that he normally handles the procurement for parks. So, and he's just one man. So it's just something that we'd have to make sure is, will work out. Because he may not be aware of this project.
Well, it's not going anywhere. We have Terry, and the park is not moving, so not to worry. We just have to vote on it to approve it, and we'll be good to go.
I love the idea, though, Michael, about because we've had a number of projects now that we just, it makes sense to put procurement forward when we talk to applicants to make sure. And, I've actually was thinking about the application itself. Like, it just might make sense having something in the application moving forward that says, and who is in charge here of, does this have to go through procurement? Because then the applicant will have to ask, right? Wait, what does that mean? Does it have to go through procurement? Who would be in charge of that? And then they would have to prove that that person has been clued in, like a letter from that person saying, yeah, I'm going to be in charge of procurement for that. And I got it.
That's exactly my recommendation. And in fact, I talked to...
Just for the future. But for example, what we're noticing, Michael, is that something could be happening by one department, but another person who's really going to be in charge of the procurement just doesn't know. Michael, don't shake your head at me. It's not about me saying we can't vote for it. I'm the one that put a motion forward. I'm just saying that we need to be thoughtful moving forward to not have these issues come up again.
Megan, we can't.
And there's a very simple, I would think, intervention tonight, which is that we can vote for or to fund this project at whatever level we determine to vote for it, because it sounds like we have consensus on a yes at some level. And just say we're voting to approve this subject to confirming with the relevant city personnel that the budget is realistic and that procurement will not require this to come back to us for reexamination. And then we can check post-vote to see whether we've got a procurement problem. Terry Shepard is very competent and she'll find out for us.
Well, now we're
So I am going to move, I guess, to amend Meg's motion to add that condition.
Can you repeat that amendment, Mimi?
So,
Probably not. I just say this stuff. I don't
I
hear
think you said
myself.
subject to the fact that procurement
Or just
budget would
subject
include
to
procurement
uh,
costs.
the applicant confirming for us that the budget presented is realistic, taking the requirements of Mass 30B and the procurement rules into account. And just, ask them to check it and get back to us as quickly as possible.
so
Although it's not just the budget, it's also having the expertise to do all the tasks necessary.
Well, I'm sure that Parks and Rec has a procurement process, because this will not be their first time around the rodeo.
Right. I just hope that Bob Perrette knows about it, because apparently he handles it for parks and he's already kind of overburdened. So,
well, but that's between, or should be, between the applicant and the city. If a city agency says we took procurement into account and we don't have a prevailing wage or a bidding problem, then I think all we can really do is rely on that. It's not our job to go running around double checking them.
So let me ask whether we think the right approach is to amend the motion to fund it, or whether it's to address this as part of contract terms discussion.
I would suggest amending, because this way, we can pull back the approval if there's a problem, and we're not trying to deal with a problem once we have at least the beginnings of a commitment to do this.
Okay, so you offered an amendment that we would be a conditional recommendation of $210,000.
Yeah.
And that conditional recommendation would require confirmation from the applicant that they understand that they need to comply with public procurement and likely pay prevailing wages, and that their budget
reflects that,
includes the expenses associated with that.
Yeah.
I don't think it will be necessary once we have it in the application as just a step that already exists. I just think that moving forward, it just makes sense to do a blanket statement to all applicants before we handle that in the application next cycle.
I think, Meg, you're 100% right. The next round of applicants will need to certify to us the municipal projects that they have this under control. But right now we're dealing with proposed amendment to the motion to fund 210. So Mimi, you made that motion. Do we have a second to amend that motion?
No, apparently not.
I'll second it.
Okay. So we have a first and a second to amend a conditional recommendation for $210,000 for Mayor Field. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm for the $210,000. I'm not for the amendment. Let them. They know they've done this before.
I'm with you, Mike, but
it's more about a set boilerplate that we're going to do for every project moving forward for this applicant round.
This is a city project.
Well, we have other city projects.
We have other city projects that are getting
to understand the rules, Michael. And here we are.
So, Mike, I'm with you. I mean, I think we're getting outside our lane on directing procurement processes for these projects. But, what we're trying to do is reach a consensus on how we can move forward with the Mayor Field project if we have a majority of this quorum in support of funding it. I'm prepared to vote either way, yes. I honestly think it's unnecessary for us to get involved in the procurement aspect of this thing, but it's the majority's will to do it. I will join that majority and vote for it. So, you know, I think where we are, and help me if I'm missing something, we have a proposed amendment to the original motion to fund that wouldn't require some confirmation that they're up to speed on the procurement and prevailing wage. And we have a second of that and we're discussing it. So if there's more
I
discussion.
would just like to add one thing, because I think this has run away with us a little. I am not suggesting that we get involved in the procurement process.
Right.
All I am suggesting is that we check to make sure that when they prepared this application, Parks and Rec was aware of the fact that they are, of course, a city agency, which they are aware of, and that they have budgeted this out consistent with the rules that require them to go through the city's procurement process. I'm sure the answer to those things will be yes, and we will have no further difficulties, but we might as well make sure, because not all city-owned property has come to us with applications that do reflect that understanding. That's all it does. It's going to be one phone call and it's going to be over.
Okay. Again, I've said what I had to say.
Yeah.
Hey, do you have something you want to add here?
I just want to add that these were instructions that came directly to me from the Chief Procurement Officer, Lori Bellinger, that we need to make sure that city projects follow procurement law. And so if they can't do it, she's sort of acting like we have to do it. So that's why it's so important. These are, direct instructions from Lori.
Let me interrupt for a second.
I don't think so.
We don't work for Lori Belanger, okay? We're not procurement, but I'm ready to call for a vote. I don't think we need to keep talking about, whether this is in our lane or not. It's an unusual circumstance that has come up. We need to deal with it one way or another. Either we have a motion to amend in a second. So I believe the appropriate process is now to take a vote up or down on that amended motion. Unless anybody has something else they want to add into discussion, I'm ready to call for a vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'll vote for the proposal, the $210,000. I'm not for the amendment.
Okay.
I wish you'd separate
We just get votes on both of them. And
Mike, I hear you, and we'll call for the vote, and you can vote
Any way you want.
with yes or no. But we have a motion and a second. I think this is within the rules. I think we're following them properly. A motion and a second for an amended motion to fund this with a condition that they communicate to us that they're aware that they need to comply with these municipal procurement and prevailing wage requirements, and that their budget reflects the expenses that would be associated with those requirements. Right?
right,
All right. Can I call for a vote?
please.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
I'm opposed to the amendment, not to the
I
$210,000.
understand.
That's all we're voting on.
Fair.
All right.
Use your ears.
1, 2, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 1. Passed. Amended motion. Okay.
Before we move on, can I ask a question? Because
Yes,
my
please.
internet is unstable tonight. I've been kicked off like 4 times. So
Really?
I apologize. I might have missed something. But is there something in the application that makes sure that the applicant knows what the not the funding process, but the purchasing process, the public bid, is that what we vote? Like, we voted to check on this project, but this comes up fairly frequently, it seems like. Like, why wouldn't we make sure that there's a question that says, is the applicant aware of public funding laws, if applicable, or something like that? Because not everybody is required to do it, but all public agencies are, cities, towns.
So Marco, I think maybe when you were offline, Meg made that very point, that we should probably, for the next funding cycle, modify
I
our.
thought I heard a hint of it, and so I said, "Of course, why not?" Okay,
Check there. All right, just put a check.
But is that what we just vote?
No.
No, but we're going to get. That's not on the agenda for tonight, unless we want to deal with it.
We'll get to that.
Got it. We're not going to see new applications for 6 months at least. So I think we got time to tweak that.
We should consider that amendment, though.
Right.
All right, thank you all.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so we've voted to conditionally recommend. Go ahead, Rose.
Did Marco just vote on that, or was he offline?
Marco, did you vote?
I voted. I voted yes.
Okay.
Voted.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 3 remaining pending applicants.
Did we vote on the underlying?
We have to vote on the
210?
project.
Did we what?
We voted on the amendment, not the project.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So we voted to amend, but we didn't vote on the project?
Yeah,
Right.
so now we have to vote for the
That's what I was
project.
trying to, okay. So now let's, so now does someone want to make a motion to fund based on the amended motion?
Yeah. No,
I think
we
it's
have
the
that.
original motion.
Yeah, I would vote to approve the 210. If we need another motion, it was Meg's motion as amended on the floor just now.
Okay. So we have a second?
Sure.
Second.
All right, all in favor of funding the amended?
Aye.
Under the amended.
All right.
Aye.
All right, everybody, unanimous. Okay, thank you. That's why I was questioning the rules, like where are we on this thing? So, okay, we're across the line on that one.
I don't know if Izzy was able to vote since his screen is closed for that, so I just wanted to point that out.
Did.
Okay, he voted.
She voted, yeah.
All right, we have 3 other pending projects. Do we have any motions on funding any of those 3 projects?
Oh, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mike.
it is only because they have 2 of the tapestries that are unique to Holyoke that the only reason I'm proposing we spend $100,000 for MIFA is these 2 murals are clearly one of a kind, uniquely Holyoke properties, and should they be lost or destroyed, that's it. They're not coming back. I like the idea of Mike Sullivan from our last meeting to, as a caveat to the contract with MIFA, if we give you this $100,000 and the project does not meet its goals and they have to scrap it, the restored 2 murals become the property of the city of Holyoke, and we can display them, for example, in the City Hall auditorium or some other place that you'd think it would be okay. That's the reason I don't want to lose these 2 murals, because if we lose them, they don't come back.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose, with the understanding that we get the 2 murals, the $100,000 for the MIFA project.
I'll second that motion, and I'll under discussion add that MIFA has expressed an absolute willingness to enter an agreement that has that kind of a contract condition.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now I have to, unless somebody else wants to talk first for once, I need to express my strong disagreement with this. And not about the murals themselves, but you'll remember that the last time we gave MIFA an award, it was with the understanding that this is an entire project that cannot be separated out into components. I mean, we're funding individual bits of it, but the benefit to the city is in the entire project. And we conditioned our last award on the entire project being funded and complete. That is the restoration of the Victory. This would obviously be a completely different kind of project if we were just funding the murals. We should separate it out, I would think. And we should also, because we have only the representation of MIFA itself, that the murals are even reasonably restorable at this point. And I would strongly suggest that before we consider funding this at all, we get the opinion of Vitek Kruka, who has them in his possession and was in charge of taking them down, that they actually can be restored to a degree that as a separate project, they make sense to the city. And I know he has secured them to the extent that they can be secured. They're in safe storage, but they had deteriorated badly, as I understand it from him. And, you know, I would like the opinion of a professional and the chosen professional about the practicality of this as a separate project before we start spending any money at all on it.
Okay, anybody else? Mike?
Well, maybe, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's thoughtful and you're right. But if we give them the $100,000, it's with the caveat very explicitly that we get back the restored murals. Now, if the guy says, look, they're beyond repair, then we want the money back. We want the whole $100,000. We want it back. It's in the contract.
But it's a different project. I think, you know, just restoring these as something independent of the Victory Theater project is a completely different deal from restore a piece or give us a grant toward the restoration of the Victory as a whole.
No, I don't want, well.
Agreed. I agree, Mimi, but that's the application. You know, the application is for the restoration of the murals. And, you know, we have, and so I would suggest that, you know, we can make these contract terms that, you know, before any money is spent, there has to be documentation that they can be restored within this budget. And two, that if the project doesn't go forward, then those murals are the property of the city of Holyoke. And I agree also, you know, this is very different than the last application because I don't think the sconces have the same type of value outside of the Victory Theater that the murals do. So,
you know, seriously, I think that it's a different thing and a full rehearing if we are just funding the murals for their own sake, as opposed to something with the obvious value to the city that the full restored theater would have. That they're beautiful, sure, but as I say, before we commit it, I would like to know what condition they're in and what we would expect to get out of it. And, you know, honestly, if they're as beautiful as the ones in the library that have never deteriorated, I understand perfectly and I might be swayed. But I just, given our shortage of funds and the number of demands on us and MIFA's history in general, I just don't see this without further information. I'm very skeptical about handing them another penny.
All right, so anybody else have any comments? We have a motion and a second to fund with conditions that would be addressed in the contract.
Who seconded it?
I did.
Thank you.
Mike and I seconded it.
I just have a quick question. Could we not just bring VTech in and in a few weeks just to ask them the questions and get some answers before we actually vote on giving Victory Theater 100,000 that we don't even know the condition of this or where these can actually go in the future? So it might come off that it should be a separate project, but at this point we need more information as far as I can tell.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Marco?
Yeah, I have a similar comment because we don't, like, are these unrestorable? Like, it could be that we spend money and then, you know, spend half of it and somebody gives up and says, we can't do this. You know, we spent money mobilizing and now we're here and, you know, there's nothing to work with. So I think getting an estimation of the condition and whether or not it is restorable is prudent. It's kind of like buying a car, right? You don't want to buy a beautiful car that doesn't run. You know, if the tapestries was beautiful, but now it's a bunch of, you know, shredded cloth.
I mean, the whole purpose of this application is to restore these murals, which is being, you know, directed by the U.S. Department of the Interior. I don't think there's an option of you can't not restore the murals. So they're clearly restorable. The question becomes, you know, how can you not restore them, right? I mean, what possibly could be?
Well, I don't even know what they are.
Deteriorated to the point where, I mean, sure, you can put the chemicals on them and dab stuff on them and try to repaint them, but they will in no way resemble the art that was there before. There is such a thing as so much damage that you can't really fix it.
Yeah, but I think, wouldn't that have been addressed by the, the studies that they did as part of the restoration plan, and the Mass Historical and the U.S. Department of the Interior has reviewed?
I don't think that they
They're
looked at every
old.
piece of it and said, can you really do this or not?
They're like over 10 years old at this point.
Yeah.
But they've also been stored in a safe manner by the person who's planned to do the restoration. So
we have an expert. We can ask him.
Yeah, why can't we ask the person that's going to actually do the restoration? We should just ask them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're under discussion, right? We have a motion and a second, and
I don't know.
we can.
Okay.
So Amy, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to give you some background that, because this is a long time ago that we first got this application, as well as the sconces one, that originally the application came into us without any specification on where the money would go. So for the sconces. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah. Who's there?
This is Don Sanders. I've been on since the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, cool.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that was you. I can rename you.
Okay, Don. So you're
Well,
here.
thank you. I'd appreciate it. I've been on since just after 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we didn't know that was you.
So Don, you hear this
And
discussion?
Yes, well, I did, and I tried to get through to ask respectfully if I might speak.
Yes. Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I just finish what I was going to say?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Sure, of course. I just was trying to get through. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no,
and
that's
actually,
okay.
I may
I'm
not
glad
be
that we
aware
know
of how far of where we are right now, because in trying to get your attention, I had to call several numbers, right?
Yeah. Amy,
Yeah.
so,
Thanks.
look,
I just wanted to give some background that originally when this application came in, the first MIFA application, it was not, there was no specific area that the CPA award would go to. It was obviously an application that had been submitted, to other funding sources. And so in other words, I guess their thinking, as they said to me, was that whatever the amount that was awarded, the 100,000 would be fungible. It could go to any part of the project. But then the committee seemed to want to know where it would go. So then I came back to Don, to Kathy, and said, where would the CPA funds go? And then they came up with the sconces. And the same thing, I think, for this one is that it wasn't really specific originally to the murals, but it was that the committee wanted some sort of tangible focus for the funds.
So, okay, but now we are with the application in front of us for the restoration of the murals with a condition that as collateral for this money, if they were to go forward and restore the murals, and the Victory Theater did not open and they couldn't there, that they would become the property of the city. So now we have a question, Don, as to whether or not these murals can actually be restored. And so if you could speak to that, I think it would be very helpful.
I'd be happy to. I'm always happy to speak to what I think is a positive visual and touristic destination type attraction for the city. And if you'll bear with me a little, I do have to say, and I think you would feel the way I do, that I sit a bit bemused when I hear MIFA referred to in such an unnecessarily negative and untruthful way. I feel like this is a gossip session and not something that is useful for the city or its future. And I have spoken with VTech many times, and I'd like to ask Ms. Panich, if you have spoken directly to VTech recently about his assessment of his contract with us to restore these murals that he has not spoken to me about.
Don, I don't think that's appropriate to be engaging in that
okay.
discussion. What what I'm
I
asking.
feel very insulted, and I think the city should feel insulted. Okay, I just have to say that. I don't mean that about all the people there, but to say that an organization, so I will come back to that.
Yes.
The murals,
Yes.
which are tremendously valuable to the city, both artistically and as a community treasure, have already been funded and assessed by the National Parks Department, and a grant was awarded to us, to MIFA, based on our expertise and our desire to preserve them. It was granted. That is the money that took the murals down and was able to convey them to VTech. We were asked to choose who we thought would be a professional and certified restorer, and looking at VTech's great work, etc., and his credentials, we chose VTech. I've had several conversations with VTech since the murals came down. We feel confident about their storage. I do not believe that they have deteriorated any more in storage with VTech than they were on the walls of the Victory. They've been saved, but I do need to stress that art historians and experts already reviewed that they are restorable. They are oil paint on canvas, and they're as restorable as a Da Vinci. So I would be happy to have a conversation again with VTech to see if he feels differently, but we have not heard in any way that they have been assessed as not restorable. And we're going on that assumption. They are down in order to preserve them, and restored, they can go back up and be the attractions and the adornment to the city that they're meant to be. I have to underscore all of the, your worries, and I mean, everybody would be normally worried about such a big project, and I share those worries. But again, I underscore, we have identified $31 million towards a $46 million project. We have already been funded for the murals, and basically as a vote of support for our work on the project. And if the remote possibility that the theater did not happen, as I said at the last meeting, I care much more about the value of that art and their importance to the city. We would absolutely be willing to talk about having the city be able to place them someplace else. I do not think that's going to happen, but I do think that that's a very good idea, and I think I expressed that last time. I have to say also, my understanding of the award is if for some reason they can't be restored, we're not going to spend the money if they can't be restored. In the same way that we're not going to spend the money on the sconces if we don't raise the rest of the money. So I see that the city and the committee, I'd like to be in your position to feel that it's not the kind of risk that you think it is. I mean, if the monies are not raised to do it, they're not going to be spent.
So Don,
it's not a situation.
I think so many of us see value in restoring the artwork and in the project itself.
Can I speak, please? So Don, the concern of the committee, I think, is twofold. One, that these murals may not be able to be restored. And secondly, that the city, if the murals were restored prior to receipt of 100% of the funding required to open up the Victory Theater, that those murals would become property of the city of Holyoke. So what my question to you is, if the committee were to vote to recommend funding, would you agree to contract terms that address those two things? Before any dollar is spent, there is some type of certification that they can be restored. And two, if they are restored and the Victory Theater project does not go forward, those murals could become the property of the city of Holyoke. Are those contract terms that you might agree to?
There are certainly contract terms that would absolutely in favor of talking about and coming to some arrangement with. Yes, absolutely. I said that before, but I'd have to point out that part of them, there would probably, yes, the answer is yes,
okay.
But
okay, yeah. And that, to be negotiated. Details were devil in the
right.
detail. And
I guess what I'm trying to say is that the way they would be restored, or what they would be restored for, the current estimate, et cetera, is for them to be professionally restored and placed back where they were. So that's, we'd have to be all very willing to talk about all kinds of issues that are not as quite as simple as they may seem.
Okay. All right.
But I absolutely am willing to do that.
All right. Anybody else on the committee have any comments or questions? We have a motion and a second.
Well, Meg was trying to make a comment at one point.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Meg, you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just think, I think it's a great project. I just want to make sure that it's restorable, because the cost is only in, if we fund this project, there's other projects we can't fund. Right. So it's not that yes. I don't value the project. It's just that it might make sense for us to make sure it's ready to go, can be restored, because otherwise there will be other projects that we will not be able to fund. So that's my only piece.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Rose?
So I just have a couple of clarifications, I guess. First of all, I think it would be important to have VTech come in and talk to them. I mean, we need a clearer picture on the murals and if they're restorable. And I think, Don, it's great to have VTech behind us on this. The other thing is we've already tied up quite a bit of money from CPA funding, and it doesn't seem to be moving forward. We're still hanging in there to try to see if we can help this project move forward, and it isn't moving forward at this point, as far as I can tell. And so why would we tie up another $100,000 before we know what the project really is, whether it's a separate project, or are we just adding more money to money that we're encumbering that could be used for other projects? And my last point is on the tax credits. I believe that they may go towards the building, not so much towards the MIFA organization. So if somebody else, if over the years this doesn't get going in the next few years and somebody else comes in and takes on the project, then those tax credits would actually go towards the building, is my understanding anyway.
Okay, anybody else on the committee have anything they want to add?
No, just that I would be very willing to entertain this as a separate application, but I don't think that it was what we were originally presented with. And I think something just for giving Holyoke back the murals, assuming that they're restorable, we're now talking about a hybrid project. Is it as part of the Victory? Is it a standalone? I really don't think that it makes any sense to consider it as half one and half the other.
Well, it clearly is a hybrid, right? Because it does have value whether the theater moves forward or not. So we have an application which is restoration of these murals, and right. I think it was Mike Sullivan who suggested, not waiting for there to be 100% funding of the project in order to restore the murals, but to actually move forward with the restoration of the murals with the understanding that if the rest of the project doesn't come together, those murals become the property of the city of Holyoke. Right. So it is like it is a hybrid. It's not like the sconces or some other part.
If it's not like the sconces at this point, I really think that we want a new application, and we do want to hear from VTech. And with that, I will, I think all the points I would have made have been made.
Why would we need a new application? We have an application in front of us for restoration of the murals. It doesn't have anything to do with this.
No, because originally this was presented as step 2 of the funding that we were meant to give the CPA or give MIFA to support its fundraising efforts elsewhere as part of, our vote of confidence in it as the city. It is for the murals basically because that was a project that could be set apart to some extent, and we could say the funding was for that. It was always there as phase 2. As presented to us, it was going to be the same kind of deal as we had for the sconces. And now suddenly, without there being any consideration of whether this is worth $100,000 to the city when there are other demands on our funds, whether it is a practical project, we're being asked to vote on something that's quite different from that.
Well,
And
it's a very narrow scope application. It's evolved, no question, but we have in front of us, and other applications.
I disagree. You're not going to change your mind. I'm not going to change my mind. So you might as well leave it there.
Can I just finish what I was going to say?
You're the chair. Go right ahead.
Okay, then I'd appreciate that opportunity. We have a very narrow application in front of us for funding of the restoration of the murals that will hang it at the Victory Theater if the Victory Theater is successful at raising the money and renovating. If it is not, then these murals would become the property of the city of Holyoke. And we would also, no money would be spent on restoration of the murals unless they are restorable. So I think we are, it's better than the sconces because we actually can fund the restoration of the murals separate and distinctly from whether or not the theater actually moves forward. So, I think that answers the questions about this application and the allocation of funding towards it and how the city is protected if these murals are restored and the theater doesn't move forward. So, anybody else?
Well put.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to fund the up to $100,000. Amy, is there something that?
Well, I just want to say that the application is actually very broad and it talks about the entire restoration of the theater. The murals are just one portion of that. So it isn't really narrow. It's exactly like the earlier application for the sconces, except that instead of sconces, it says murals. So there's nothing in there saying what would be done if the theater didn't come together with the murals.
Right, but that's what we're adding in as a response to concerns about committee members, what would happen. And Mike Sullivan's recommendation that these murals are so important that whether or not the theater project moves forward, it would make sense to restore the murals and to have the city take ownership of those. So, so we have a motion and a second to fund up to $100,000. We have the applicant who's agreed to these conditions. So I'm going to call for a vote. So all in favor?
May I just interject? Okay, I really feel uncomfortable because I want to make sure that the committee knows we are not. The vote is not to. The focus is to have the murals restored and returned to the theater. If the theater is not going to be restored, then there does not need to be any money spent on the murals. That would be a whole separate issue. In other words, the murals would not be restored and then wait around for the theater to. In other words, I think it's confusing. So in other words, it's the same if the funding to do the whole restoration as dictated by the Mass Historic Commission does not come about, then the monies would not be put into motion. I mean, the $100,000 would not be spent, and then it would be an issue of how the monies would be spent in whatever next phase in terms of their going to the city or whatever.
So you don't think it makes
In other
sense
words,
to standalone have a mural project and fund the restoration of those?
you mean separate from their being replaced into the theater? No. No, I mean, yes, but not until they're not going to. That would be a determination that would have to be made, given the fact that the theater was not going to be restored. I guess what I'm saying is, what I think is the beauty of this, although I certainly understand that you feel that you might be putting $100,000 aside that doesn't get used until it's found out the theater can't happen, or does get used when the theater can happen. But the point is, that's the point. It's also not a risk to that $100,000.
No, but it does.
In other words,
it does tie up.
In other words,
grand.
Yeah.
I think that's
so I think.
Struggle. That's the struggle, Don, is that.
I mean, I'm saying that would have to be we'd have to work that out in the agreement. In other words, if you're proposing that you would like to have the murals restored starting tomorrow and kept someplace, does that make sense what I'm asking? Because I'm not sure if that's what's on the floor.
Well, I think what I was thinking is that there is value to restoring those murals, whether the theater is
whether the theater opens or not, but that is not to be determined until it's determined whether the theater can be opened or not.
Correct.
I mean, if right. So that's what I'm saying. That would be part of the contract, which is still the same as the contract for the sconces, until all the financing is there and everything happens at once, which is unfortunately the situation with the tax credit funding. That would then, at that moment when it's determined that the monies cannot be raised or MIFA cannot do the restoration of the theater, then that the issue of the monies that have been put aside for the sconces, and I'd like to hope for the murals, would then be freed, and the fate of the sconces, which should be saved as well as the murals, would be determined then.
Okay, understood.
Can I just ask a quick question to Don? So, is that okay?
Yes.
So if I think everybody's in support of this project, but so my thought is that we have time. Wouldn't it be to our advantage to have VTech come in and really address this in terms of what are the conditions of the murals, and then maybe moving forward with a separate contract or something that makes this happen in a different way, so it's not part of the big picture and tying up more funds.
May I reply to that? I don't know. I feel very worried because I'm on the phone, and
I know.
That's what I think. It's great to have VTech come in and talk about and his plans, et cetera, et cetera. But that does not, in my mind, I don't see why that is in any way a risk to fund. For the committee to say they wish to fund $100,000 towards the restoration of the murals, it's not. That is not going to be done unless it's determined that they can. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, yes. VTech can come in and say, yes, I mean, I think it can be done, and they'll be great there, and but their main purpose is to be in the theater. I mean, if they can't be in the theater, I believe, as a person who loves and appreciates the arts and knows what they can do for the community, they could be thought about as then repurposed or thought about going somewhere else. But I don't think that is something that should be done now. I mean, I would caution people against thinking that was a good idea. And I mean, in other words, I'm not sure I'm making myself clear. The fact that the sconces, by the way, are by Donald Deskey, who was the designer of the interior of Radio City Music Hall. They are in terms of value, almost as valuable as the murals. They may not have the visual impact, but they are quite collector's items. Donald Deskey, and there's one piece of furniture left by Donald Deskey that is sitting in the building as well. From MIFA's standpoint, the power of, and I tried to say that last time, I share all the committee members, worries about how can such a project of this size happen. I share those worries, but the power of the committee, risk-free, saying that they want to have these done and want to participate in the victory is one of the major vectrums that can help the theater happen. And it's not the only one, it's a piece of it. And I really feel that being able to make that commitment to wanting the theater to open is very important. It's very important to the city, and it's very important to the energies of lots of people who have put in 15 years to make this project happen. And that's what I'm really trying to appeal to people. I would not in any way want to see anything that is valuable in the theater, the murals, the sconces, lost because for some reason we don't succeed. The city, it's the community and the city that won't succeed if the victory isn't restored. So rather than see those destroyed, of course, I would rather see them preserved and found some other home. I would prefer to have all of our efforts and commitments, as I feel I have shown, and everybody who's worked hard on this project, be focused on getting the theater open. And among ourselves, yes, we could talk about, well, it's great because if it doesn't, the murals can be restored and put someplace else. That's the spirit. That I think this kind of, frankly, commitment to that building. It's the only theater of its kind left in the entire Connecticut River Valley, right. And Holyoke has it. And we need to send the message. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you?
Sorry.
It's okay. I mean, I love your passion for the project, and so if I'm reading what's happening now, there's a desire on the part of the committee to hear from VTech that these actually can be restored, and so I'm going to withdraw my motion to have a vote conditionally on these contract terms, and as a committee, I think we'll invite VTech to, give us his input on the restorability of the murals, and then we'll go from there. Okay, is that okay with everybody on the committee?
And I assume that that MIFA will be invited to that.
Of course.
Meeting.
Of course.
Good, because I think hearing people's, I just feel so much that, including with Ms. Panich, I would love to have the opportunity, and I've reached out many times to say, I would like to have the opportunity to make people feel confident about this Victory Theater project and to dispel the.
My apologies, but this is getting off our agenda at this point. We're going to end up being here all night. I mean, I think that, I hear what you said. I had thought that, the murals could be separated from the rest of the project, and it made some sense.
No, I'm not going to sell out the value of the theater before the theaters.
So look, I think we have a question.
But I'm willing to talk about preserving them if for some reason the theater doesn't open, which I think,
Okay. So let's make sure that there's some value in these murals and the preservation. If we're going to use those as a collateral on this, awarding money conditionally, that there's actually something there. So I think,
yes.
I think we'll leave
and I do have to say my words earlier to Ms. Panich, and I have to say, I think that to express gossip.
Don, please stop.
Oh, come on.
Don, it's really,
Okay, we're
I
done.
think this is the right place to have that conversation. So I think we need to stop.
It's the right place. I had to say it.
Don,
Sorry.
please don't. I'm asking you, just please stop on this at this point. Let's just move on.
All right.
And we'll come back and revisit your request for funding when we have a better sense that the murals actually can be restored, and that, you know, and I think it would also be helpful to have a sense of what the value of those restored murals might be. So let us as a committee work on that. We'll get back to you with an invitation when we have this on our agenda again, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
But the city may, I don't, this is just a very, very, very disturbing.
I understand. All right.
And I hope the committee will appreciate that. I don't mean to make your meeting difficult,
No,
but
right.
this is very disturbing.
Let us move on, okay, please, and
Okay.
and we will be in touch with what we're thinking about the murals and getting VTech in here and addressing those technical issues, and then we'll have time to deal with your request then, okay? All right, so let's go back to, we still have two other applications that are in front of us pending. One Holyoke 2-family house and Valley Opportunity Council rental assistance, 50,000. Michael Moriarty, 199, and Valley Opportunity Council, 50. So we have any other motions, or Mike Falsetti?
Mr. Chairman, I hate to say this again, but can we, the $100,000 for MIFA, I take it the committee does not want to award it this evening, if I understand everybody correctly. But I'd like to keep the $100,000 in abeyance. So if, when this fella comes in and you all are all convinced, we'll have the money to actually award the contract. Is that, Amy, is that possible as an administrative technique?
We can each as committee members make our vote with that in mind, that there is, I don't think we want to take a vote to reserve that money contingent upon other things. We have other pending applications in front of us that we need to deal with.
I hear what you're saying though, Michael. It's just that, we have these 3 requests left, right? And we can't fund all 3. So we have the 50 grand for the emergency housing application. That's sort of also in my mind as like, I'm trying to reserve that in my head, in my own little mental bank account for if they come back and say, hey, we need it, right? So if I have that in my mind, we cannot fund both of the 2 existing projects, right? So it feels a bit at a standstill for me until we have answers from Vitek Kruta and Don Sanders. I look forward to having them both coming back in. The only project I feel like I could vote on in this point is the emergency application. But I don't think we need to vote on it yet because he sort of said, I will come back to you when I know if I need it. And that's sort of where I'm at.
Okay, so you're not making any motions to fund anything at this point?
No.
And I hear you on the Steve Huntley application. I would add, here's my thoughts on his application. I honestly don't know how the city council is going to react to a rental assistance program. And, originally, I think Steve was looking for a lot more. And I think
he reduced it quite a bit.
Right, and I think part of it is a little bit of a test. Like how is this committee, how is the city council going to react to an application for rental assistance? And so I mean, and I don't know if that changes anybody's mind about making a motion to fund Steve Huntley's 50 grand or not, but I would add that. And
that's true for many projects. I'm not sure how the city council will look at another MIFA project, right? In terms of seeing like the same applicant come twice.
That's
That's something we haven't experienced either in terms of how the city council is going to interact with that kind of request either. You know, I think all we can do is do what we think is our due diligence and make the best recommendations that we can, and then we see what the city council does with it.
all right. So does anybody, so the other one is,
Can I
please.
can I say something about the VLC? The only question I would probably have for Steve Hunley is because he says he doesn't necessarily, he looks like he's okay now. He might need the money or might not. But if he doesn't need the money, like, could we push this over until the new fiscal year in July, where we'll have a lot more money to actually offer? If so, that's the only question. I mean, I'm with it 110%. It's just if we could push it off until the next fiscal year, so that way, guaranteed he's gonna get his 50 grand, and he'll probably get something else more on top if he needed it. But if he needs emergency now, then that's a different question. You know what I mean? If we can provide more context around that, that would probably help out, for me at least.
Okay. So I'm not hearing a motion on Valley Opportunity Council's $50,000 request.
No, I'm just trying to read consensus. It is one of the three outstanding ones that I would be happy to move forward if everyone else were comfortable with it. It's just a matter of whether we want to wait on all three. But I'm seeing some nods, so why not? I will move to approve the $50,000 for Valley Opportunity Council emergency rental assistance if needed.
Okay, we have a motion, and do we have a second on the Valley Opportunity Council's $50,000 application for emergency rental assistance?
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Mike Falsetti?
Mr. Chairman, as he said the last time, he doesn't know if he needs it or not. This is $50,000 we're talking about. He said he may need it, he may not need it. Wayfinders in Springfield is the place to go. They've got a great deal of money to give to people. He even said that himself. No, I'm not for, for this category of 200, we already give $250,000 to Wayfinders. That's enough. Now, I know this is a different type of application, but he says he doesn't really need it. We know the Congress may be passing some bills to bringing more money into the states and into individuals. Let's that work itself out and get through the system before we award $50,000 of our money that may or may not be needed. So no, I'm not for it.
Okay.
So
Rose?
I just want to say I seconded that because I did want discussion on this. I think it's important to have our thoughts on it before, we move anything forward, but it's important to at least have the conversation this evening. So I think this is all good.
Okay, anybody else, any discussion?
Well,
we have a motion, it's Marco?
What are the details on the third project we're looking at tonight? There's MIFA.
Oh, that's the house.
The one Holyoke $199,000 two-family owner-occupied house on Dwight Street. Dwight Street.
I might need a little refresher. So we're looking at these three projects, and it seems like this one, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of hurry.
No.
It's kind of like,
I will withdraw that motion.
Yeah, so I just wondered now what the third one is, because MIFA seems like we're going to wait, right? We didn't approve that. And so do we need to discuss the third one so that we can get a kind of balanced picture?
Yes, we can discuss it at any time. I mean, I think, Mimi, did you just withdraw your motion for funding of the $50,000?
Yeah, I did. And I see no reason. I mean, I don't mean to shut down discussion if people want to have it. I think discussion is good, but the sense of the meeting seems to be that there's no emergency to it. And if there is no emergency to it and nobody feels that it would be a good idea for them to have that money as a sort of slush fund if in case there was a sudden emergency, then I am more than happy to wait with the other two projects and consider them all at once.
Okay.
I also really like Rivera's point that we should ask Huntley for just a clearer timeline.
Yeah.
Or even like it would be great to have some sort of deadline. Like, I'm going to tell you on this date, I'm not going to ask you for it. You know, or at this point, we're going to push to the next cycle. I think that kind of clarity would help us.
Yes.
Okay, so we could, Mike Falsetti?
Mr. Chairman, you know, the
I
Congress
second that.
is debating this as we speak. I mean, this could all change by next week.
Yeah.
This is way out of our league. He doesn't need it. So let the Congress work its way out, go to the Senate, the president sign whatever he signs, and see what happens. We don't have to act on it tonight. If it's not needed, don't award it.
And Mike, I'll point out, right, you're the affordable housing and housing representative. So, you know, I defer you. I feel like you're an expert at this. I defer to what your opinion about these types of programs are. So, I don't have any problem with not taking action on that application tonight. I don't see it. I think I'm in agreement with the committee. I don't see that there's a imminent need for that funding. And certainly, I mean, the problem is right is it's taking a period of time between when we take action, city council takes action, we review contract terms, and then a contract gets drafted and entered into. So, you know, we can be pretty responsive ourselves, but you know, we're just the beginning of the process. But that's just food for thought. I'm not lobbying that we should take action on this tonight. I just want us to be aware that that's it. I don't know if it changes anybody's opinion. I'm not sure it changed mine. So, all right. And then, we should talk about the last one since we've talked about the others. There is this two-family, one Holyoke CDC, owner occupied, which, you know, I think what gets difficult is the other applications are all a little bit up in the air as to whether they're going to get funded or not. So if you take 199, out of this, you've consumed a lot of the remaining funds. So anybody thought, Mike Falsetti, I'm really anxious to hear what you have to say about this proposal.
Well, Mr. Chairman, by way of an announcement, the Holyoke Housing Authority will be building affordable housing in South Holyoke, and we will be in the process of doing this for quite some time. We've got the money. It's going to happen. Let the Housing Authority spend their money. Let's keep our money in our wallet. We've already gave $250,000 to Wayfinders for just this type of activity. That's enough. I mean, we can't be a bank to everybody. And like I said, the housing authorities, you'll be hearing, well, Mimi may be aware of it, but I'm sure she is in the planning, but we're going to be going forward with construction of affordable housing in South Holyoke. Let the housing authority pay for it. Let's keep our money in our wallet. And like I said, we gave the Wayfinders $250,000 out of this category. I think that's more than enough. And we can't be a bank to everybody. So I would say I wouldn't support it.
Izzy, please.
The one thing I would say, right, and I shouldn't say because I was a former employee, but I'm not defending them or saying anything for One Holyoke, is it's not the same as Holyoke Housing, because Holyoke Housing is a federally funded organization versus One Holyoke is a small nonprofit organization that is thriving off of local dollars only. And it's only local. It doesn't have no other support of income. So yeah, I totally agree. If they could bring money to the table, that would be totally great. That would be totally great. But to compare to Holyoke Housing, which is a federally funded program, I kind of think it's not fair when it comes to that. I think, in my opinion, I grew up in the flats, and I see what Old Holyoke Development Corporation did in the flats, and I actually feel like they provided affordable home ownership to a predominantly Latino community, and that is actually not highlighted enough for within their organization. I used to tell them that all the time. So if you visit the flats and you drive around the flats and you look at all the little townhomes, they all kind of look the same it's true what Rose said. If they were a little more appealing, I would I agree with that part when it comes to that. You know what I mean? But to be honest, as a kid growing up, and then now that I'm older and I get to see the footprint that old Holyoke development kind of left here in the Flats neighborhood, like, I feel like some of that should kind of be invested in moving forward too as well in the community. Maybe now's not the time, but eventually. That's just my opinion.
I mean, Izzy, you raise an interesting, you know, these are owner-occupied two-family properties, and it's
one other thing is that all the homes that One Holyoke has sold to everyone in the Flats, or any home they've ever sold, none of them has ever went bankruptcy. None of the people have ever filed bankruptcy. They still own their homes. Like, because I mean, they got to have contracts for like 30 years or something like that, to make sure that they continue to own the home before they sell it forward. There's a lot of bureaucracy within that I don't know, because that wasn't my part. But that's just, I'm not defending them. I'm not saying that the project should go forward or whatnot, because I kind of do feel like we should save some of the money too as well. But just so that we provide some context for other people about that. I mean, some of what One Holyoke has done in the past with regards to affordable housing.
So that's another project that, you know, anybody here is more than welcome to make a motion to fund or not, and we can just, you know, roll them over and keep sitting on a couple of these applications till some of these things resolve themselves. So I don't know if anybody wants to make that motion or not. I'm not hearing it. So, okay. I'm not hearing one, right? All right, so that gets us through that agenda item, which was the review of the outstanding 2021 applications. We'll put that back on for our next meeting also. I think we should continue to have that as an agenda item, and if we decide we want to make motions and fund them, we will. So we have as a next agenda item, review of contract terms for the projects, 2021 projects that we have voted to recommend for funding. I think some of them have gone to the city council already for approval, and none of them have. None of these have gone to the city council.
No, because you were going to decide on the terms for everything,
and then go to city council. Okay, so do we want to bang through these? Yes.
Sure.
All right. So does everybody have? Amy sent us, I think they were attached to the Zoom meeting notice, right? To the.
Yeah, I emailed I believe I also emailed them all to you, as well as
Right.
putting them on the actual meeting invite. And there may be a few updates that I need to give you based on my discovery about the prevailing wage issue. So I mean, the procurement issue.
So I think I have an email from you. What's the date on this thing?
And unfortunately, I can't really share screen because this laptop is constantly freezing on me. So I'm really afraid to do that, to show you the documents, because I'm afraid then I wouldn't be able to go back to the Zoom.
No, I have never done this, but I think that you made me a co-host, and if so, I may be able to share them.
Yeah, you could do that. That's right. Any co-host can share. Good point.
All right.
I've never done it, but I see a share screen button.
Yeah.
If
you have it up on your desktop already, that's what I recommend. First, open it. Like, in other words, you could minimize the Zoom screen, open the documents up, so they're all already open on your desktop. Then you share screen, and it should be easy to click on each one for everyone to see.
Okay, let me see if I can do this, and I will be right back. Carry on without me.
So the first one would be Wayfinder, if you can track that down.
I also have it in front of me, and I can read off information, if you want.
Amy, what email did you attach them to? Was there like the most recent one, or?
I think February 17th.
It was before the last meeting because this was on the agenda for the last meeting. But it's also on the actual calendar invite. So, I mean, if you click on the invite itself on Google Calendar, all of those documents are attached there.
And Marco, the email is February 17th at 5:54 p.m. That has
Okay.
The conditions for each of them.
All right. Thank you.
But some of them have been changed a little when I realized that the city projects would have to follow procurement law. So I have added more things. So the most up-to-date version is on the calendar, Google invite calendar, whatever.
Unfortunately, it looks like I am not going to be able to do this.
Do you want me to try to do it? I'm just worried. I can try.
Yeah, no, I think it would be nice if somebody could. I just can't get a document onto my desktop that isn't, that clearly identifies what it is, and I can't download.
I was just able to open one of them pretty easily, so I think I can share the first one. Let's see. Here it is. Share. Okay.
Why, yes.
Do you all see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. How do we want to do it? Do we need to read each line, or do we want to? Let's go through it, right? So the project description, wayfinders, 250,000. Deadline for completion is 8 months from the date of the award.
Yeah, the reason I put contract completion is, because we don't know when the contract itself will be complete. So usually it's better to say how many months from the time that it's actually dated rather than saying a specific deadline. Although they did give this deadline as all construction to be completed, but that's in 2023. So that should be fine.
And then the drop dead deadline for full funding was September 1st, 2021. But they can ask for a 4 to 6 month extension that could be granted exclusively by the CPC. In other words, not have to go to the city council. So that reflects that extension deadline column. 4 to 6 months is consistent with the column before. You can obviously approve or not. And then there's a permanent affordable housing restriction. And on this screen share, I can't see the last column. What's signage? Is that what that is?
Yes.
If you minimize our images, you can get our images out of the way, and then it's reports and signage. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody good with these conditions?
Yes.
Wayfinder, any comments or discussion on it?
Looks good to me.
All right, let's move to the next one then, which is Scott's Tower.
Okay, I have to open that one now. Hold on. Let's see. Okay. Oops, what happened here? Okay. Just 1 second. So the next one is Scott's Tower. All right. It's hard for me to tell. Hold on. Let me just. Sorry, I have too many things open on my screen, and it makes it a little confusing. I'm going to close some of these things so that it's clear what I'm sharing. Okay. And share screen. Here we go.
All right, Scott's Tower, 175,000 to Kestrel and the City of Holyoke Department of Conservation. So deadline for completion of the project is December 31st, 2021. Amy, you have something here, disbursement of up to $25,000 of funds may take place prior to the acquisition for community outreach and site planning purposes. Is that change?
Acquisition and CR. Yeah, sorry, this may not really belong under that column, but this was information that I got from Yoni that I really thought the committee should know. Oh, and I have a note about how I think that Stuart said that I have to go back and find out what Stuart said in response to that. Let's see.
So this is 175, and my recollection was that we were talking about 175 to purchase the property, and now it looks like that 175 is being split between 150 and 25.
Well, I think that he may have had this in the application, but I was concerned about that too, and about whether that is okay under CPA, which is why I emailed. And I did find the email to Stuart, and I asked him, is it permissible for some of the funds awarded to an open space project to be used for, it's really community outreach and site design, I guess, or is it part of, can it, be considered part of the process of making an open space acquisition? Let's see. He said there isn't a guidance on this in the CPA legislation, unfortunately, so it's going to be a local decision. I think you are always safe using CPA funds for project costs that are necessary and integral to the project. Once you get to the things that aren't central to the project, like community engagement or design help, it gets harder to justify spending CPA money on that, but there is no hard and fast rule on where that line is. One thing is clear, however, you can't use CPA funds to pay for city staff time on a project. I don't think that's an issue here.
Okay,
so it's a decision you have to make.
So how does the committee feel about this $25,000 for community outreach and site planning purposes as part of the acquisition cost of 175?
I think it makes sense. And I think if we have local control over that decision, I would be in favor of it. Primarily because I think the use of the space, once it is acquired, is important. We want to align it to community needs.
Right. So what's happened so far is we've done a little mini reach out to people just to see who knows about Scott Tower, how they spent their time there. And so it's a matter of making Scott Tower and Anniversary Hill relevant to today's times. And so we want to reach out to the local community that surrounds it, but also the bigger community to find out what would they like to see happen at Scott Tower? How would they like to see it be the new park? And so it's really, I don't know that it'll take that much money, but it's a matter of just making the difference to make it a park that draws people and works for people versus not knowing that. So that's what the money would be spent on.
Anybody have any comments to that? Concerns about it? Or Mike Falsetti?
It's 20. It's not a lot of money. It's 25 grand. But if it's necessarily part of the project, and we have faith in Yanni and faith in Kestrel, and they think this is needed for that particular project, for that activity, then yeah, okay. If it's needed, it's needed. It's part of the process. You might as well be safe than sorry. So sure, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, anybody else have any thoughts? Marco?
Yeah, I seem to recall that the purchase was forthcoming. Like, has the property been purchased? Is everything finalized?
No. Yeah, no, hang on. The property has been purchased.
Oh.
Kestrel did a bridge loan, so they put up the $285,000, to purchase this property.
Right,
And
but it
so
hasn't been purchased by the city, right?
no, it was purchased by Kestrel.
Right.
And so Kestrel is, we've just written a grant for the park system for $400,000, and we're hoping we get reimbursement for Kestrel for their piece of the project, and then the city's piece of the project, which is 150 plus the 25, is from CPA. And so Kestrel is hoping that they get reimbursed for their piece, and then we did this. So now we have an extended look at how we want to move this project forward. And so we're going to reach out to people. And then also we should have an extra $200,000 to decide how we want to move forward with Scott Tower and what we want to do and see for that park system. And then we are going for the second grant next year for another $400,000 through the state.
Go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't like, drawing money away from necessary funds. That's all. But
Right.
It seems like they've got lots of funding venues. So,
well, because of CPA, we have opportunities to really engage other funding.
And
okay.
the idea is that the city's going to purchase the property from Kestrel, correct?
The city will own the property, and Kestrel will hold the conservation restriction. They just wanted to make sure we had to come up with the money right away, and CPA couldn't get us the money that quick, so Kestrel did a bridge loan.
Right. So, but again, the idea is that that $150,000 will purchase the property from Kestrel. The city will use that.
Yes.
150. Yes. Now it's 150, not 175. If we use.
Well, it's one. So that I'm honestly, let me get clarification on that. I didn't see it as two things, but I always thought it was 150 with the additional 25 to do our due diligence to find out what people would like to see there, and how they want us to move this project forward. So we were moving it forward in that way, and then Kestrel put up the other remaining funds to make the project happen.
And you have, out of curiosity, you have some kind of an agreement with the city that the city's going to purchase that land for that price?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Anybody else?
Yeah, this was always in his application.
That's right.
I believe this amount of the portion, so it's not that there was something withheld.
It was just that we didn't want to ask CPA for all of the money, and Kestrel wanted to help with this project, and they knew they could, but they couldn't do it before the funding came from the state. So they had to put up the money on their own. And then the city is putting up their money through CPA, but Kestrel's holding the fort until the CPA money comes forward, which is very not typical for Kestrel. So they like this project.
Good. I mean, I like the project. I think everybody likes it.
Yeah, I did. I think so too.
All right. And what else do we have for columns here? Deadline by the end of this year. Is that reasonable, Rose?
Yes.
Okay.
This is all what Yoni had told me, so it's going on that.
Okay. Just want to make sure,
we're moving at a rapid rate.
Okay. So the deadlines look good to everybody?
Yep.
Ability to extend, conservation restrictions. So we're all set with that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, next, what do we have? We have Wistariahurst.
Well, I'm sorry, there's a question here about the extension deadline. Did you all just say that you agree with 3 months? Okay, just want to make sure. And also, as I mentioned,
yeah,
I did tell Yoni about the procurement law thing, and I sent him the policy. So hopefully that's something Kestrel is experienced with.
Yeah, and I did see that today, Amy, on your email, and so we will address that, and I'll be in conversation with you.
Yeah, that's a complicating.
It is.
Right? I don't know.
What is Rose? I missed that.
The procurement law is a little bit complicating, but I think that Kestrel's dealt with this in the past, so
okay.
I don't think it's a problem because honestly, I don't really think refers to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
acquisition is so different.
Not,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I would say the same probably would have come up with Blue Tack, right? Like from a procurement process.
Yeah, but it's really not part, because it's not part of the piece, you know, so we don't really need it to even deal with procurement.
Right. Well, you know, as I said, I want
But we need to show that we don't have to.
well, you got to work that out with the city, with the procurement office and
Yes.
the law department.
And so that's Yoni. He'll
Right. That's
he'll
his
he'll
job.
handle that.
Right. Okay, good. What do we have for what's coming up? So that was Scott's. Wistariahurst, are we ready to talk about that one?
Yeah, I'm trying to open it up, but I'm having a hard time with this laptop. As you're probably seeing, it's taking a long time for Word to open it.
Wow.
This is what I deal with this new laptop all the time. Okay, here we go. Okay. And they are experienced with procurement, so they're good as far as that. So we just have some question marks here about the.
Yeah, I can't see it. If you're sharing it, I can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it? Can anyone see it?
No, the only thing I see is a bunch of, I think I see your laptop.
Oh, okay. Let me just start again. Share screen. Here we go.
Okay, now you're good.
Okay, so Wistariahurst, pretty straightforward. Start April, end. Well, end, they've already started. End is September. 6-month extension.
But with those dates, once again, it's really based on when the contract is signed. So that's why I put 6 months and a question mark there. And
okay.
I should look and see what Kate's last email was about that.
All right, and then so if they want to ask for an extension, the CPC would have the authority to grant a 3-month extension beyond their 6 months from date of executing the agreement. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Sure.
Sorry, can you just wait one moment, because I do need to look what Kate said here and I missed what you said. So I'm trying to do like 2 things at once here. Let's see.
All I did was read your
okay.
highlighted.
Okay, yeah. So Bob Perent said in general 6 months should be okay. But he says he may have more input once he sees the attachment. I don't think he got back to me. So I don't know for sure if 6 months is accurate, because he didn't get back to me.
Well, let's
so maybe I should.
For our purposes tonight, let's propose those terms. And if that doesn't work for them, then we'll revisit it at another meeting.
Okay.
All right. So fire truck.
I just need to make a note, or else I'll never remember what you're saying. Tell Bob. And you did say 3 months for extension?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so saving that. And now. Oh, God. All right, now I'm having problems and my cursor is going around and around. So I just have to wait because Microsoft Word is not responding.
Well,
I know the next one is the fire truck. If you want me to just share verbally.
Yeah, let's do that. And then we can.
Okay. So yeah, the project description is the fire truck engine 9 restoration for 13067. I'm sorry, 677. So the Holyoke Fire Department, Thomas Shea. And I did just get an email from him about the whole procurement issue. Got to go back and look at that. Okay.
Let's deal with the contract terms and then we'll talk procurement on this one.
Okay. So the deadline I have is 12 weeks, approximately 3 months from the date of award or signed contract. So 12 weeks was what he said. However, that will change because of procurement, because Lori Ballinger has told me, sorry that I do have to mention this, that we would have to add 2 to 3 months period for that process, the public bidding process. So that's why it's important.
So make it 6 months. Instead of 12 weeks, make it 6 months. Give them the extra time to get through procurement.
Okay, is everyone agreeing with that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, 6 months. Okay, sorry, let me explain. I have to re-explain that. I got that wrong. So the start, it could take 6 months to start, and it would be completed. The project would be completed in a year after that time. So in other words, if there's 6 months, it could take as much as a year and a half total.
Fine.
Fine.
Okay, and then the drop dead deadline for full funding is, I don't think that's applicable here since the funds cover the full, from CPA cover the full project. And then the extension deadline, I don't know how much, how you know, if you'd want to allow it. I mean, you're already making it a lot longer. So I originally had 6 to 8 months, but.
Let's give them another 3 months if they need it. That the CPC can approve, right? So.
Okay, let me just see if I can open, I think I can open the thing now. Let's see. Fire truck. Stop share, screen share. Okay, so here it is. So we've decided to make this you've decided 3 months. And this is
6 months.
Oops. Okay. Okay. And then, yeah, as you can see, I wrote in information about prevailing wages and, procurement. And the email I got, I think that what Deputy Tom Shea said was, I don't think I will have to resubmit the proposal. I think because I said to him, your budget might have to change because of prevailing wages. If, and he said he doesn't think he would have to resubmit the proposal because from what he read, he said, I will not be required to follow prevailing wages. I'm not sure why he thinks that, but that's what he said.
Public work.
What?
It's not a public work. Prevailing wages are public work. When you're building something, when you're earth moving, it's not when you send.
But isn't it? Okay, so it's not considered construction. Okay.
Right.
And actually, Lori did send the entire manual, which he thinks that all of you should read, which I think I shared.
Yep.
That's right. That's the procurement process.
And he says the work will be done outside the state, he said. So I think he thinks that's the reason they don't have to follow prevailing wages. I researched other restoration companies and I found one more, and it is also located in Pennsylvania. As of now, I've only been able to come up with 2, but I'm still researching. That's what he's saying.
Yeah. No, I think, having actually looked at the manual, my next thought was this is going to require me to look at the state law that underlies the manual. Because I can't believe that he actually has to do this and there's no alternative, but that may be true. But I'm going to look and see whether there's any way out for work that obviously is unique, and there can only be a few vendors in the country who are capable of doing this.
Right.
It's a lot like the merry-go-round situation.
Which I don't think we want to open that box.
No.
Let's look forward and get these things done.
I agree.
So, yeah, I think that column is he has to comply with procurement, whatever that is. That's a condition of the grant.
Yeah.
They need to comply with the procurement law. whatever
The
that.
question then
Lori-
becomes what the procurement law actually says under these circumstances.
Mr. Chairman, this is not our job.
I don't
This is
think
way
so.
beyond the scope of what we're legally empowered to do. That's the purchasing agent's job. That's what
Right, but
gets
she
paid for,
doesn't
not
feel
us.
that way. She thinks it's our job, your job.
No, we're not employees of the city of Holyoke. We can't we can't arrive at legal decisions. We're not even employees.
Right.
No.
I think we cover ourselves by putting in and this is contract condition terms, that they have to comply with the
Yeah.
procurement.
With the city.
Yeah,
No,
procurement.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then,
That's
that's
it.
for them to work out, Lori Blanchard will be all over this. I mean, she's going to make sure that they're in compliance with procurement. And if they're not, I don't know what happens, but I don't think it.
But the issue is
No.
that she's expecting me to make sure that they're complying. And
Just say no.
I mean, you're right.
Just
You
say
don't
no.
work
Well,
It's
I
not
told
your
her that we're
job.
not
that's a
managing
question
the
that I think
project.
we refer to the city solicitor's office and get them to.
Amy, you don't work for Lori Belanger. Okay. I mean,
No, I know. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just I'm not sure how to handle what she's, demanding of me. So, and I certainly don't want to get the city in trouble or the committee in trouble. So
we're not
that's
gonna-
my
first of all,
concern.
there's no prevailing wage jail or procurement jail. People are doing things and making their best efforts to comply with a fair purchase of these goods and services. That's where our responsibility ends. The telling the grantee that they need to comply with, a municipal department that they need to comply with the municipal procurement code is above and beyond our call of duty. But I'm more than happy to put that in as a contract term. So they're on notice, they have to comply with procurement. If we can assist them somehow, the applicant asking us questions, we can help point them in the right direction. But I don't want to be the inspector general of the community preservation funds. That's a slippery slope. So we have a relatively simple charge. Put those contract terms in there. I think we're good.
Oh, and how many years to the preservation? Oh, see, this is different because it's not a building. So I don't think that it's sort of a local decision about how you're going to ensure, for example, that the fire department never sells the truck, or, how are you going to ensure that it remains, a public benefit? Because you can't really do a preservation like a deed restriction because it's not a building or structure. But there might be a way, I don't know, to build that into the contract, or a memorandum of understanding. But I mean, obviously we'd have to ask legal about it, but what is, the committee's will on that?
I mean, it's a city asset, right? And it's city money that's going to this. If they improve that fire truck and something's happening in city government where they decide, we need to unload this thing and we're going to use that money for something else. I mean, I'm not concerned that that's ever going to happen, but I don't think that's the end of the world. I don't know that we need to insert some term that they're not allowed to sell that fire truck for X number of years without returning the CPA money. I don't know how other people feel, but.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll
think
say
it's perpetual.
we're getting way out of our field. It's the fire department, it's the property of the city. Let them handle it. They want money to restore it. It's their property. They can do it what they want. We can't be a judge and jury over every single building. That's not our scope of work.
Anybody feel differently that wants to put some kind of restriction on there? Feel free. Speak up.
Well, I think that before we decide there is no restriction, we'd better go back to basics and see whether we can even do that, or whether the Community Preservation Act requires that we put some kind of restriction on this.
Amy, didn't you research that?
Yeah, I did contact Stuart to ask about it. And I believe he said that there's nothing really written into CP law for fire trucks. But interestingly, other CPA communities are also funding fire truck restorations. It's kind of popular right now. But I think that he asked it if it was a city thing. And the fact that it's a city thing is good. As I recall, let's see if I can find his email. But so I don't think that it's so much of an issue because it's not a private,
Right.
restoration.
You're not taking
Yeah,
Not
if we
someone, give
can
it to
treat
a
it,
private entity that's going to turn around and sell the fire truck and buy themselves a vacation home.
Right.
I mean, if we don't have to put these sorts of restrictions on city projects generally, I don't think we have to do it on this either.
I agree.
All right, so that's it on
Yeah,
that?
so I think that this is probably okay. So in other words, there's not going to be any restriction on this.
I wouldn't put one.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, not needed.
Yeah.
Okay. I just have to mention here, unfortunately, I have to leave the meeting at 8:30. I have another commitment, and I'm sorry, but it's unusual, but I really
Yeah.
can't. And that's in only
I
about
think we're
15
good.
minutes.
If we focus, I bet you we can get done. So let's plug away with next is Pulaski Park.
Okay.
If your computer cooperates, that might be the, all right.
Let's see. Okay. Pulaski, here we go. You see that?
No, I'm still looking at the fire truck.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm assuming, obviously, this is the DPW, so they would know about procurement.
Right.
Okay.
6 month, and then a 3-month extension by the CPC if they need it.
Sure.
Done. Everybody good with that? With the rest of the terms on there?
Yep.
All right. Next is the JFK Memorial.
Okay, sorry, it's slowing down again.
I know. It is what it
See
is.
if I can stop share and open up the next thing. Okay, so we're up to JFK. It's trying to open right now. But anyway, I can start telling you about it. So this was originally for 10,000. This one is complicated because of the procurement. And Mark Joyce did email us to say, or to me and maybe some others, that he would have to ask for not just 10,000, but 15 to 20,000 in order to cover prevailing wages. Okay, do you see this or not?
Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet.
Okay. Screen share.
So I'm going to just pipe
Here
in
it
while
is.
we're waiting for this. The idea that this cost would go from $6,000 to $20,000 because of prevailing wage, 300% increase doesn't ring true with my experiences in these types of projects. I mean, prevailing wage, I do quick, you're talking, for a equipment operator, $50 or $60 an hour. You're not talking about $300 an hour for someone on a bolt. You're talking maybe a 30% increase in what your labor expenses are associated with prevailing wage, not 300%. So my feeling on that is let them, they have to comply with procurement, right? And the procurement is going to say, this job is publicly bid, public works project that requires prevailing wage, and let them get their bids. And if they need to come back to us for 3,000 more or 5,000 more or even $10,000 more, we'll deal with it when they get their bids. I have a problem with, bumping up. They asked for 6. We pushed it to 10 as a buffer for prevailing wage. How it goes to 15 to 20 is beyond my experience with things.
We may have gotten information from Lori, because I know she was going to send, if you look at the column, the restriction column at the bottom, Mark says he will do 3 quotes and awaits info via Lori on prevailing wages. So I wonder if he got that information and he's basing it on what she said. That I don't know.
I'm telling you, it can't be. It just
So
can't
I
be
think
unless
just
they-
wait,
Right,
wait,
unless
see
they,
what he,
right,
tell him
And
to come
see-
back.
right, and we'll see what other actions we take in the meantime, and there may be the money or there may not be, but it's such, I would just, let's let them go forward with what we have.
So do you want them to submit a new application, a new budget? What are
No.
we asking for?
But
No,
wait,
do nothing. Just go get their bids and let us know whether they have enough money or not.
well, but I think we want to hold this in the interim in that case,
Right.
because the last thing we want is for them to get started, run out of money, and be unable to raise the rest of it.
Right, so they can't start until they've got their bids, and you know, there'll be fixed price contracts. So they shouldn't, they're not going to piecemeal this thing. It's going to be one contractor. They're going to put out a bid, and 3 people. They don't even have to put out a bid. All they have to do is make phone calls, and 3 people will give them prices, understanding now that the number's prevailing wage. And if it's above 10 grand and they need to come back to us for more money, we can respond to that.
Well, but doesn't it make more sense, because we don't know what our future financials will be, to have them make those phone calls, come back to us when they have real prices, and then we can get this thing through knowing that, yes, you know, you're absolutely right and it came in at under 10 and there's not going to be a problem, or that they're going to need 15 or whatever and we can address it then.
So
If
don't
this is-
send it to the city council.
Yeah, I would just, you know, ask for the updates, get them to address it, and then everything will be clean from there on in.
That's a great idea. Just have them go get their 3 bids with prevailing wage. And my understanding of the way prevailing wage works now is you have to request of, I don't know, the Department of Labor and Standards, whoever sets prevailing wage rates, a specific project in a specific town. They used to publish these statewide schedules. They seem to be much more localized now. So he'll get exactly how much he has to pay for each type of employee, and you know, so Lori will give him that. He'll be able to share that with the potential vendors, and then they'll give them their budget. And if it comes in and it's more, then he can ask for more. But you know, I don't think we need to.
I have a question real quick.
Go.
With regards to
Breaking up, Izzy. Anybody hear Izzy?
It sounds good, though.
right?
You're like
the thing,
boxing or something over there.
yeah, my screen. Yeah. So, with regards to that, yeah, who's doing the project? Is it a nonprofit, or is it like, did they come out and then they can't hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so like, or is the city gonna do the repairs onto the JFK thing? Because for me, I thought I will, from what I understood of prevailing wage, is if, let's say,
Well, because Izzy, the city owns the park, so it's city-owned property. That's why they're kicking the prevailing wage, even though it's the St. Patrick's Committee that submitted the application. Can you hear me? I can't hear Izzy. Can you guys hear me?
No, we can't hear Izzy, but we can hear you.
Donate it to the community. If I understand that.
Izzy, we can't hear you.
I do have to leave in 9 minutes. I really have to be strict on when I'm leaving. So you can continue. But somebody would have to have these documents and then share with me later what was decided.
Hey, Kip, is there a way that I could just air one thought about the fire truck application? It just moved really fast, and then we were like on to the next thing. Is there a reason why we wouldn't have a preservation restriction on the truck to prevent the sale of it by the city at some point in the future? Like we would any other investment that the CPC makes?
It's an interesting point. Didn't, in fact, this is like reaching into distant history, at some point the city sell a bunch of our art collection because we were just low on funds and it wanted some money?
Yeah, I've heard that story, and I'm always wondering if like I want proof of that.
Yeah.
Story. But yeah, I just do wonder sometimes, like sometimes the city,
Flip.
yeah.
With assets.
I just want to put out there that like I just don't see a reason not to put in a preservation restriction that would prevent the city from selling it and making a profit on it.
So for how long?
I'm not saying against anyone in particular, just for perpetuity. I don't know.
We can't really do a preservation restriction on a fire truck in terms of the formal, like recording a deed. It has to be for a property, but you could create some other form.
It could be a contract term.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a deed restriction. It could just be a contract term that, they're not allowed to sell the fire truck.
Period.
If it's the will of the committee, and I guess I would ask for how long, I mean, how long do they have to own it?
Forever.
And I think, Meg, the reason is it's also pretty clear that, they're not going to sell it. I mean, you guys have had it since 1939. You see these fire guys? I mean, they love it.
I totally agree. And my piece always is not necessarily the people that are in charge right now. They're invested, right? It's always like, well, in 30 years, they're going to like, is that same level of investment going to continue? Well, I always think about the next generation of people, not the guy who owns the business, the guy sells the business too.
So how long would you propose that there was a restriction on the sale of that fire truck?
I don't know. This is all new to me.
Well, you got to, 30 years. I mean, 10 years, 5 years?
Since I just wanted to, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say that since I have to leave soon, do you think we should schedule another short meeting to finish this important work before I have to go?
We have 6 more minutes, right? Can we try to get?
I think
I don't think we can get through it that quickly.
Well, let's see where we get.
And also, okay.
We're not going to get to review.
Well, we won't get to decide on when the next meeting will be. Okay.
Well, we can do that and let you know if you have to leave. But while you're
here.
I
may not be able to make it. So you'll have to do it via email, I guess. And I'll let you know if I can.
Yeah, make it. We'll figure it out. We usually meet. I mean, I don't want to meet in 2 more weeks. I would prefer to wait a month. But,
okay. Well, there's only 5 minutes left.
All right. Well,
this is a busy time. 2 weeks.
Okay. So extension deadline. So wait, what did we decide? I put down.
Wait,
I will tell Mark Joyce to ask for the 3 bids and prevailing wage first, and if it's more, he can ask for more at that time.
Correct.
So maybe we should just do you still want to work out these other details, or just put this on hold?
I think we should just, given the time pressure you're under, I think we should probably put this on hold and figure out when we're meeting next.
I agree.
What's left to get through?
All right. So when do we want to meet next?
You want to do a month? Is that what you said, Kip? So today.
That's what he said.
I mean, I want to hear from VTech, so I want to get this meeting going.
Yeah, if there's a way to meet sooner, if only just to handle the conversation with Don Sanders and VTech Cruda, and then also to look at just these contracts, especially I'm hoping the JFK Memorial at that point will come back with the budget. They're ready to go. We can move things along to the city council.
Okay, that sounds good, Meg.
So we want to meet in 2 weeks?
Okay. Want to split the difference and
that
make
would
it
be St. Patrick's
Make
Day,
it 3.
March 17th.
Make it 3
that's
weeks.
Painful. That's painful.
Yeah.
The 24th.
Make it 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
The 24th?
Yeah.
Okay. The 24th we'll have those. So can I make a point? This is 2 meetings in a row where near the end of the meeting, people have said I have to leave at a certain time. And it would be helpful to know that at the beginning of the meeting so we can try to get through the agenda, understanding how much time we have.
Well, this is the first time I've ever had to leave, so I think you should cut me a little slack, you know.
Well,
you
no, it
should
was me
also
last time,
remind
and
me
I
this
agree.
All I'm asking is that you just do it at the beginning of the meeting. It's totally reasonable. We all have lives to live, but you know,
Sure.
now
Yeah.
you know, so
From
you know,
my perspective, I would love to always see it as like a 6 to 8 meeting, and then
Yes.
what we don't finish, we reschedule. Just because, like, right now I'm totally missing bedtime. I just love my kids.
Yeah.
you
You
know,
know,
the question is, would you rather have a meeting that lasts a half hour longer, or would you rather have a meeting every 2 weeks versus once a month?
It's just a busy part of the season for us, you know, like I've just gotten used to that rhythm of we have a few months here where there's kind of a bunch of meetings and then things get quieter and then it's every
agree.
month or
I
every 6
agree.
weeks again.
I'm just asking that if you know
I
you
don't
have
like
a
missing
deadline,
bedtime.
if you have the deadline at the beginning of the meeting, it's the time to express that so that we all know what we have to try to get done within. We try to get through.
So the last one we didn't get to discuss is the War Memorial one. So maybe that could just go on the agenda for the next meeting.
They also have to get back in terms of figuring out procurement and bidding, right?
So that gives them time to do that.
So, yeah.
All right, so.
But we didn't. So will the War Memorial then be on the agenda next time, Kip, for discussing the terms?
It's going to have to be. Right.
And then I would just relate to them, Amy, that they need to, you know, bring it up to date.
Well, do you mean you would like them to attend the meeting?
That might be a good idea.
I know that
make sure
Chris has
they've
never
completed
done
bidding and have a revised budget.
Who are we talking about?
The War Memorial, or are we talking about JFK right now?
Or VTech?
I guess both of them need to come up with that. And I do have one piece of good news. I know that there is a good person working on the War Memorial, and that Bob Perrin had told me that he's okay with helping with that project as well as the JFK monument. And he's very experienced with procurement. So.
Great.
Do you think that Bob should come to the next meeting? That might be helpful.
If he has time. The man is really.
Yeah, he is busy. That's true.
Yeah.
He's going to have a nervous breakdown for crying out loud.
So I think we need to wrap up this meeting and let Amy move on.
Good thinking.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you, Mike.
everybody.
Night.
Bye.
All right, so we're gonna adjourn.
I guess we are. We have a next meeting set up. We have most of the agenda. So I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Take care, everybody.
You too. Night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.